Welcome, everybody. I'm Frank. I've got Mackenzie and John with me. No better duo to talk about Maryland racing than Mac and John. Guys, let's dive right into it. Want to get your take on the first, or rather the top 5 fillies that have run, 3-year-old fillies, that is, that have run at Laurel Park, so far this season. And John, I'll start with you. You sent in your top 5, which are appearing on the top of the screen. What you got? Tell us about them.
Well, it's been a bit of an interesting year because last year there were 3 very good Maryland-bred 2-year-old fillies running: Superstitious, Just Filtered, and Doc's Miracle, all of whom are currently on the sidelines. So we've had a bit of a thinner crop this year than in years past, but still some interesting horses here. Peach Tie, for fairly obvious reasons, I think, is the top choice. She beat a lot of those to end her 2-year-old season in the Gin Talking Stakes, came back and won the Wide Country last time out over Law School, who I believe came back to finish 3rd in the mainline stakes at Parks. She's won 5 out of 5 on dirt, has done very well both here and out of town. Clearly still the second banana in the Brittany Russell barn as far as 3-year-old fillies go, with Dazzling Dame, who may run in the Virginia Oaks next week, taking that top slot. But still a very nice filly, and definitely the favorite in the imaginary Weber City Miss future book.
That is quite imaginary.
The top 2 in the extra heat, also getting some love here from me. They're both out-of-town horses, not quite pure Maryland runners, but I thought Victory Music and Brescia both ran big races when they were 1st and 2nd, respectively, in the extra heat. Curious to see what they do next. Rounding out the list with a few wildcard horses, Mo Maxi didn't do much in the Wide Country last time out, but did run a huge race against first-level foes on opening day. I think she's eligible to bounce back wherever she shows up next. And then Miss Fulton Gal won a first-level race back on the General George Barbara Fritchie undercard on February 14th. Came from off of a pretty mild pace and one going away. Not a huge figure, but she's trending in the right direction, has some upside. She could be a sneaky horse in the Beyond of the Wire should they choose to go that route.
Mac, what do you think here? Is it Peach Tie? Peach Tie's 5 for 5 on the main track, took the Wide Country Gin Talking. She's one of those horses that, as a handicapper, I struggle with. Like, she never really, figures-wise, she never runs all that fast. All she does is win races, which, in the end of the day, is what they pay off on.
Oh, and that's kind of what I think speaks to why I've always liked her, is she does as much as necessary and as little as possible. To me, that is something.
It's a good way to live life, right?
Yeah, it's a good way to live life, and I think it's a really good way to approach horses. So that's kind of what draws me to her. Now, the question being the 2 turns, how do things change for her? And that I think she'll have a chance to answer for us, but it could sort of shift things around. But I've been a huge fan of Peach Tie all along, and I stand by her here. I do think she's the most attractive, who's actively running on the Maryland circuit. She goes out, she's super professional. She can sit any kind of trip. To me, that's the type of horse who I want to get behind, and that's one who I like to cheer for, to be honest. Now, if we go back, Victory Music and Brescia, I agree with John they both ran very good races back earlier February. It looks like they're both training back in Kentucky, so it'll be curious if we see them come back, but it definitely makes sense. They're competitive on the Maryland circuit, and I think if we do see them pop up in the entry box, they definitely warrant some consideration. Now, Miss Fulton Gal is one who I also agree with you on. She's a little bit of a sneaky type who wouldn't be surprised, especially with 2 turns coming up in the future. She's one who maybe you take a little bit of interest. She'll probably bring some value. I do want to mention one who popped onto the scene this past weekend, though, and that's Sunset Rising for Daniel Mackenzie. Looked really, really good and looked kind of an interesting race on paper. Maybe it was going to run through the Trombetta and the Russell fillies, but Sunset Rising was just super well prepared. Daniel Mackenzie has a great background in how to bring horses along, how to start them. So while he doesn't have a ton of first-time starters, has some pretty good ones that he's thrown out there. So just a fair shake, and now Sunset Rising, really impressive. And I think that speaks to the attention that he gives in his program and the work that he puts into them. That was going 5.5 that we saw her this Sunday. Thought it was a super professional trip. She ran a 58 or a 59 Beyer on debut and, sat a stalking trip, went wide and kicked home. So really, really likable effort. She's one who's going to be a price, and it's just a funny time of year. It's tough to step up into that company now, but if they run like that on debut, I'm sure it warrants taking a chance at some point.
Yeah, you would think it'll be interesting to see how she stretches out, and actually you sort of segue us into the next section, looking at some of the news from this past week. And let's start by talking about Sunset Rising, Mac. This, as you said, this horse wins first time out. She's by Golden Lad out of. This was kind of cool. I was fortunate enough. I was in the winner's circle when the horse won. Danny arrives with his little daughter, Leanna, on his shoulders. Leanna co-bred, quote unquote, co-bred the horse with Danny and Katie Voss. She's the daughter of Golden Lad out of Fearless Lassie. Fearless Lassie is a horse that Danny claimed that then became his first win as a trainer. So now it's sort of coming full circle, but as you said, a pretty nice looking effort.
I thought it was really, really professional. And, on pedigree, there were 2 horses in here who, figured they were first time starters, but she looked every bit the part. I thought maybe I wanted to give her a race, but, seeing her out there in person, I just couldn't deny how attractive she was. I thought it was a super, super professional debut. John, I'll be curious what you think, because she was one who I was pretty excited to see.
I thought she ran a giant race, but every time a first-time starter who wasn't terribly heralded wins a race, I do have to take that effort with a little bit of a grain of salt. She did go off at 19-1 in that race, second biggest long shot in the field, and also was a race in which 4 out of her 6 rivals were also first-time starters, and one of them had made her debut in a low-level maiden claiming race. So I'm not quite sure what the quality of that field was. I think that'll take a little more time, but it is a fantastic story, and I am very interested to see what she does next. I would like to see her go in a first-level allowance before trying stakes company. I think that's a more realistic way to climb the ladder.
I would agree with that. They'd actually, he told me that they had thought about waiting to a couple more weeks for Colonial because the horse is Virginia certified, but then they figured we got a horse who's ready, let's go. You mentioned, Mac, the couple of other firsters there, Trombetta, Brittany had one. Those were pretty nicely bred horses too. Brittany's a daughter of Vicoma, and Mike Trombetta's by Yaupon. So there are a couple of pretty well-bred horses in there. Obviously, that doesn't mean anything. We'll have to see what happens, but pretty good start to things. Now let's talk about a horse we're all pretty familiar with last year. He won the Tessio, and John, that is Pay Billy. Long time between drinks of water for him, but he sure ran pretty well the other day.
Finally put it all together for the first win of his 4-year-old season. And to your point, I mean, he quietly had a fantastic local campaign last year. He came in second by an extremely short nose in the Miracle Wood to Barbadian Runner, whose exploits we know very well. And then, as you said, came back to win the private terms, came back to win the Tessio, took a shot in the Preakness, actually got a bit of action that day at the windows, didn't do much, went to the sidelines, and now he's slowly rounding back into form. I thought this was a very nice effort. Indy Charters on, as you can see, is on the lead, who is in fantastic form of his own. He beat the very precocious McLean's Rook in his last start. He has a clear lead here at the 8th pole, but Pay Billy wins it in very professional style. It was not a matter, I thought, of just running down a tired leader. Indy Charters on still looked like he had plenty of horse left, but I thought Pay Billy's class shone through and he won going away. So he has been slowly getting better throughout his campaign. He is, I believe, out of allowance conditions. So I would imagine that we'll see him in the Native Dancer next time out. And then from there, it could be a return to competition on Preakness weekend, obviously not in the Preakness itself, but I do think the Pimlico Special may be on the radar screen.
Wow. Already jumping into the Pimlico Special. Mac, this is sort of an interesting horse. I mean, when you watch his races, he is always under a ride on the far turn and seems to be going nowhere. And then you look up at the end and he's made up ground. And curious for your take on him.
I'm right there with you, because what do you make of a horse like that? I mean, you wouldn't call him one paced, right? But he, this was going the 1 turn mile that we were watching. So maybe that's something that it just suits him particularly well. We've seen some tactical speed from him earlier on in the campaign, but he seems to just maybe be changing style. What I do want to point out is my only real tick against him coming into this weekend, or I shouldn't say against him, but question mark really. He had run an 84 and an 85 buyer in those last 2 outings. He needed to run better, and he needed to run a career best buyer in order to kind of move forward. And the question was, okay, is this the spot that he does it? Yes, likely. And he did. He ran an 86, so steady improvement. But I think I say that because the numbers on the page are reflective of exactly what you see in real life, if you're following me there. So he's an interesting horse. I think he's just an honest horse. He tries really hard, and if he's in the right spot, I do think he shows up. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him continue improving. I'd love to see him, stick to these local stakes and just kind of keep churning away, because I do think he has room to grow.
The Gorham Barn's been ticking pretty well so far this season, and I'm sure they're happy to get paid Billy back in the winner's circle. There, one other horse I wanted to talk about. Cairo's Surprise came back off a little bit of a layoff from November in the South Mountain Stakes and ran down Bud's Notion, who was honestly, to me, inexplicably 2-5 in an allowance optional claimer the other day, Mac.
Look, I was pretty excited to see this horse, and it wasn't necessarily the trip that I had expected, but I was even happier to see it happen just because of how he did it. And this is a horse who has some ability. He's a 3-year-old. You talk about things that are happening Pimlico or Preakness weekend, I should say. Maybe he's one who you could kind of put in those imaginary futures. It was a really solid pace. And this is a horse who has the early speed that I fully anticipated he'd kind of be right there. But this move, as he's just flying around the turn, I thought really, really impressive. First off the bench, he arrives at gelding now. Maybe that could really have changed things, but I like the way he finishes up. And I think there's a lot more room in there for him to continue on.
John, you just like this horse because he's a Jersey bred.
Well, I did pick him on top also, and he was, as you pointed out, an extremely generous 7-2. I mean, I thought he ran a huge race in that Penn National effort, and I think everyone kind of got caught up in the Gary Capuano, Yedsit Hazlewood hype and sent off Bud's Notion at a rather absurdly low number. As Max said, I thought Cairo's Surprise made a very nice move. Did kind of drift out a bit in the stretch, but you can kind of attribute that to just, I think, finding himself first off the bench. I think he's very interesting. Next time out, and I'm curious to see where he goes, because there really isn't any stakes races, at least locally, for him until the Chick Lang, and those are very deep waters. Perhaps there'll be an open allowance of some sort that he can go in. I do think Bud's Notion, in spite of the fact that he came in second at 2-5, is definitely one who could also have a big year. I think he is going to win next time out, albeit at an extremely low price. And he's one you'll also want to keep in mind. And speaking of future books, I know the Maryland Million Sprint is obviously very far away. He was entered, of course, in the Maryland Million Nursery last year and scratched. But I see him possibly having a pretty similar campaign to Slam Notion last year, in which he did a lot of very good work locally in the 6 furlong or shorter races and capped off his year, or highlighted his year rather, with a Maryland Million Sprint win. Obviously still very early, but if everyone wants to bookmark this video and then come back in 7.5 months and be like, wow, he called it that early. What a treat.
I wish I got in on the future book for that.
All right. So quick question. If we're looking at the futures, you have Slam Notion and Bud's Notion going into the futures for a Maryland Million Sprint. What are the morning lines, John?
Well, I would say Bud's Notion would have to be high double digits, but I would take that bet and again kind of bookmark it. Slam Notion, I'm not quite sure what to make of him. I wasn't crazy about his effort in the General George last time out, and he is not back in the Not for Love, which would be a logical spot for him. So I do think we'll have to see where he resurfaces next and see how he does there before determining if a Maryland Million Sprint repeat is likely.
All right, you heard it here first.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to give you guys a few minutes off here. Going to chat about Yedsit Hazlewood. I've got his agent, John DiNatale, and bring you back in a little bit, and you do some handicapping. Sound good?
All right, let's do it.
Happy to be joined here on Maryland Racing Today, part of the Mid-Atlantic Racing Today family podcast, by John DiNatale. John, a former trainer and now jockey's agent for Yedsit Hazlewood. John, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
So I was scrolling Facebook the other day and I saw a picture of you from like 1981 with your son at Laurel that Lauren Amberman had taken. Must bring back some memories for you when you see stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Were you training at that time?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what, when did you switch over to not training and then being a jockey's agent?
Well, I started training early 2000s. And then I didn't come back into the horse racing business until about 2019.
Oh, okay.
So I stayed out for a while because my wife took over our stable and we had quite a few horses then. And of course we trained together, and Judy took over and I decided to go on and do some other things that I liked, like open a restaurant.
Oh,
So I had
that's a tough business, huh?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the restaurant business.
Oh, is that right?
So I started as a young guy in the restaurant working after school. And when my parents came here in 62, I still remained in Philadelphia and decided that when I was through all my schooling there, then I decided to come down here and go in the restaurant business. My dad, prior to driving here, owned race horses.
Okay.
I used to go out to the track in the morning with my dad and look at the horses, and I started to really like what I saw, what I was doing, and started to read a lot of books about the horses, and that's how I became involved. Then I started working with them, and at that time, Sonny Hines trained for my dad. So this was back in the early 70s, and I went to work out there. It started basically as a hot walker, groom, and, from the bottom, and learned, all the parts of becoming a trainer. And when I thought I was okay and ready to take the test, I went up and got my trainer's license and started with my dad's horses.
So then 2019, you say you come back, and did you come back as working as a jock's agent then?
I came back as a jock's agent. I came back and I started with Katie Davis.
Okay.
So I started with Katie, and then when Katie went to New York at the, I think she went up at the end of 2020, I worked with another young lady at that time, a friend of Katie's, Thais Lipestein. I still have Ty also. I've been with Ty for 5 years. And then this year I started with Yedsit in March last year before he started to ride.
Now, so Yedsit came up from Panama at the suggestion of Jose Corrales, the trainer. And Corrales had said to me months before Yedsit rode a race, he said, "I got a new kid and he's going to be good." How did you get involved with him?
Well, since I had Ty and we used to ride for Jose, and Jose and I developed a good relationship about 6 years ago. He called me and he said to me, "Look, this was probably 6 months before he started and got here." He said, "I got a young kid coming in here and I want you to take his book." He said, I'm really happy the way I saw Ty progress over the last few years since you've been working with her." And he said, would you like to take a bug boil?" I said, "I'd love to." So that's how I was introduced to Yedsit. And then Jose would call me and tell me, come over and watch this kid gallop a horse. Watch him when he's ready to breeze. He said, "I think you're really going to be amazed." And, of course, when you see a person on a horse and, they look like you're putting it that's perfectly fits your hand, the horses they ran for him, and he looked like he was doing everything with effortless ease, so he impressed me before he started riding. And of course, after that, he impressed everybody.
Well, it's hard to, I looking at his record and stuff, you tend to forget. I mean, one, he's a young kid, and two, less than a year ago, he hadn't even made a start yet, and he didn't win a race until April 4th.
Yeah, it's amazing. And right now, I think I was looking at stats yesterday, and these are the top 100 riders in the United States. Okay, so he's 16th in money won in the United States. In races won, he's number 6.
Actually, he's 5th today after yesterday's.
Okay, he moved up. Yeah, you're right. Actually, he's 5th. So you think of a kid like 48 races, I think, now this year so far, and had a lot of days that he missed because of suspension, because of whip violations, So he gets excited, when he's riding, and he might tend to hit a horse too many times.
Yeah, no, including Sunday, he missed with a 1-day suspension.
And TNT, that's his first.
This was his first win. Now, I'm curious because it took him, this was his 14th start of his career. Was he getting frustrated at all, like when starting over?
The one thing about him, he just wanted to get out there and ride. That's all he wanted to do. And of course, after his 14th win, after his 14th start, and he won without his laddie TNT. I mean, it just started to go. When you say 14, I've watched a lot of apprentice riders throughout the years, as a trainer and as agent. I mean, they ride 80, 90, 100 horses before the race.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then, he's been on a tear ever since. 24%, 25%.
Yeah. Yeah. No. 6 million in purse earnings last year.
Purse earnings, right?
1.6 so far this year. So Hazlewood doing pretty good. Now, one of the things that struck me, watching that race we just watched, Addie's Laddie TNT, his first career win, April 4th of last year. It was a very professional ride. He was patient. He moved the horse out, took him in, found room for him, and then finished up nicely. One of the things that does strike me, and we'll watch a couple other videos here as we chat, he is a patient rider. He's a lot more patient than a lot of young kids are, I think.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with the like what I was talking about, earlier, like when I used to watch horses trade, you know, it's not, you know, a blueprint or indicative of the horse's future ability, but you see some of them just do things a lot easier than other ones, and they're willing to do a lot more than some of the other ones. And people would talk to me in the grandstand, if I'm walking around, of course, while he's first start riding, and they were watching him. He said, I can't believe this he's not an apprentice, especially when he start winning because of what you just said. I mean, where he places his horses during the race, and he sits with patience and never gets, he doesn't get shook up. Young kid, on a live horse, he'll do anything, because they won't win.
Right. Yeah.
But
No.
he's going to sit there, bide his time and go and get him.
Right. What do you, as you watch him, like, what do you, the patience was the thing that struck me watching several of these recent replays, but I'm curious, like, what do you think, what's his best asset, do you think?
Well, I think his best at is where he places horses in the race. He always has them in strategic positions. For a young kid to be, that in tune to what's going on around him, it's amazing. Of course, he's an apprentice. He'll make mistakes. I mean, I've watched the great riders make mistakes in my life, and I've seen quite a few of them, and had quite a few of them ride horses for me.
Sure.
His awareness and his ability to get horses to run for him. When sometimes he wins races, and I'm totally baffled. I mean, I can't believe it that he won. I mean, I'm just standing there and said, I didn't think this horse could finish on the board. And here he comes.
Yeah.
And out, he goes outside, inside, in between. And that's the thing that amazes me. And the consistency which he does things, which he does good things. And if you watch him and watch the other riders in a race, how low he sits right behind a horse's head, and he sits low.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't see too many riders ride like that anymore. Most of them look like they're riding European style.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're talking with John DiNatale, the jockey's agent for jockey Yedsit Hazlewood. And I mean, I think too, one of the things, he's pretty tough, man. He was out for like 2 months last year with a car accident. Comes back, wins first time first time in a race.
Yep. I think the horse paid like $30 or $34. Gary's horse up in Delaware.
Here he is. It's a horse named Great Quality on August 14th.
Oh yeah, he was a favorite. Yeah, he won later on that day with a long shot. Yeah. This is after 2.5 month layoff.
Yeah. What was the rehab like for that?
Well, he went. It's basically like any other thing, building up the muscles in his arms. So he went to rehab 4 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, did the exercises that the doctors told him, that were necessary. And
was he good about all that?
he just came back better than ever. I think actually he did come back better than he was prior to his accident.
Why do you think that?
I think he had a wake-up call that, maybe he's got to pay more attention and don't do what we all did when we were 16 and 17. So, I think that it might have added a few years onto his age mentally. And first, when he was in there, he don't know how his arm was going to heal. He didn't know, until they put a plate in and had to do some surgery on him. So it wasn't just like going into a cast. So he was, a little shaken when the doctor told him, we'll have to see what the outcome looks like after the operation.
Mm.
So that kind of.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, he really, he'd obviously been riding very well, but I felt like in some ways he burst on the scene is a little too much, but like he really, I felt like opened some eyes maybe at Timonium, where he won his first meet title and he won 13 races in 7 days.
Yeah, I never was in the bull ring before.
Yeah.
Never rode at a half-mile track.
Yeah.
And that was like you said, because he never competed a whole meet before.
Yeah, and this race is his Gee for the win. This was, I think, his last win at the meet, and
McMahon's horse, I think.
Yeah, and he just sat well off the early pace. He's the horse on the outside and last currently, and is going to win with a well-timed ride. Ramon Dominguez used to do that a lot. He'd be on closers that seemed like they were hopelessly out of it, and they'd win by a length and a half. He'd have plenty of time, not move too early, but get there with plenty of time. That's kind of what this ride ends up looking like.
There he comes. That's amazing from Timonium.
Yeah, right. You're not supposed to close like that at Timonium, and he wins by a couple here.
Yeah. No problem.
Yeah.
You like what you said about Ramon Dominguez. Of course, I got to see Kent. I have some pictures with Kent winning for me when he was here as an apprentice. 597 wins. In 1 year. We had Chris McCarron, we had Derek Carg, we had Ramon, we had Antley. We had so many really, apprentice riders. He has the ability to develop into one of those type of riders,
Right.
The Dominguez, the Disarmo, and Antley. He has all the physical attribute. Now, of course, at 17, and he's, it depends on how well he proceeds from here. And I think basically with a lot of them, because as many success stories as I've seen a lot of tragic stories with young riders too, with ability and, not be able to cope with the success and the money that they've earned, So far he's been spot on. So Jose and myself, we hammer him. We don't let him get away with anything. We talk to him. We get together. We meet, the three of us. And he's always willing to listen and thanks us and okay, I'll do that. And he does go out there and do what we talked about and just tries to get better every day.
Well, let's talk about that a minute, because there was people at the track chatter and I know there was some talk that he was interested in going to New York, but I know you and Jose have spoken with him, and it looks like he's going to stay here for the time being. And obviously,
I took him up there, and
right.
I took him up. He rode 3 horses. He had a win. He won one for Ricky Dutrow, and he was second for Rudy, and fourth for Ricky in the other one. So and I took him back. And I think his overall record up there is probably 20 or 25% wins there for the 4 or 5 days that we went there. Now, a young kid, he sees that, and he was riding with the best riders in the country,
Sure.
In the best racing. That's where they want to be.
Yeah.
Right now, we didn't think it was a good idea to have him leave Maryland and go to New York. Because look, it's winter time. When Irad comes back, when the rest of them come back,
Right.
You got 10 or 12 of the best riders in the country, and you're an apprentice. Yeah, you'll get some mounts, but you're not going to, Fletcher isn't going to fire Irad and put you on his horse.
Right.
That's not happening.
Sure. Well, what do you, I guess I am curious, like sort of what are the criteria or metrics? Like there are a lot of ways it can go south, as you and I have talked about. An apprentice, goes from basically Maryland's sort of AAA. You get called up to the big leagues. If you can't hit the curveball, you're going to be back soon, but it might set you back permanently or for a long time, as we've seen. What do you want to see from Yedsit before you say, okay, I think you're ready to really try New York in a serious way?
As you stated earlier, he dominated Timonian. He dominated the last meet here where he was the leading rider. I mean, he was almost double.
And he's doing it right now.
I mean, and he's doing it again.
Yep.
So Jose and I would like to see him keep doing this for a couple of years, to maintain his dominance. Of course, look, he's won, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 stakes. So we know he can compete without the weight. The 5 pounds he gets, when I talk to trainers and I say, listen, 5 pounds with him is like Santa coming to you every day. I mean, when you get 5 with him, you get a real present, so
yeah,
it's it's one of those things. But we want to make sure that he learns, he matures a little bit before we want to, have him move into, like you said, get called up in the majors. Now he's already been there, and I don't have any doubts in my mind that the curveball, the fastball, the knuckleball, whatever ball you throw him.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's for sure.
Right. So you mentioned that he's won, I think it's 8 stakes now. And I guess probably the first trainer to put him on in a stake was probably Gary Capuano, who does, as he often says, he loves the bug rider. Yeah. And when you get one like this kid, that makes it all the better. Here's his first stakes win. This was on Maryland Million Day, aboard Onyx 10 in the distaff. And how important is it for you as an agent and for Yedsit as an apprentice in those early days to get, obviously he had Jose Corrales in his corner and that helps. And then to get a guy like Gary Capuano, who just does, his barn punches so far above its size. How important is it to get guys like that behind you to get something moving?
That's the secret of an agent. My idea is get him in the best barns. That's when he started a ride. I went to Gary, and Gary watched him ride for a couple of weeks before he put us on a horse. And I knew when Gary watched him and he saw how he rides and how he wins, when he started winning, Gary said, bring him up. So I had Gary, I had a lot of help, and still we ride most of Hugh McMahon's horses. And then I went to Jamie, I talked to Jamie Ness. I called him, I went to see him, and we started in Philadelphia with Jamie. So I said, well, look, he can come and ride here for you. He said, well, I could use him in Philly. I said, well, we'll ride Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in Philly for you, and you get first call. And that's how we started with Jamie Ness. And then up there also, Mike Pino has been a friend of mine for many years. Mario rode for me. And of course, Mike does a phenomenal job as a trainer, Mike Pino.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very high percentage, great horseman. And he's the kind of guy like Gary, 33% trainer. So when you have Mike and Jamie at a track,
You do
you,
pretty.
you have a Stinger and another missile. You have two bombs. I mean, So it's my theory as an agent, if I'm associated with the best barns, the strongest barns in various racetracks, I'm going to get the best horses to ride. And he's going to win a lot of races. In other words, if if I saw a horse in a race that was going to be 4-5, and Gary or Jamie put a 2-1 shot in the race, I'm going to ride Gary or Jamie's horse.
Mm-hmm.
And he expects me to do that.
Sure.
So he'll ask me, we ride Gary, we're riding Jamie, because he sees he's named on 2 horses, and the other horse might, of course, odds. We're not,
Mm-hmm.
somebody said the other horse is 4-5, the odds makers. All right, but that's what we do. So they're loyal to us, and we're loyal to them. And I think that's where he's getting a really good education with top trainers, and they talk to him a lot, and they help him along. And I think this is going to expedite his moving to his next level.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, with the Capilano barn, it's not a big barn, not a huge barn, but you get basically all live mounts. And the Nest barn is a huge barn, and you're getting virtually all live mounts.
You're looking at, when you look at a guy like Jamie, I mean, he wins almost 400 races a year. It's amazing.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And I mean, being a former trainer myself, I mean, it's mind-boggling how he does it. I mean, they just keep coming and they win.
Yeah.
It's like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And a wonderful, wonderful trainer to do business with. Absolute boom, boom, boom. I mean, and Gary's the same way. Hugh McMahon, no problems. I mean, most of the people we deal with are, they're great because, we know where they're going. I know where they're going. They know where I have to go. So we work around each other.
Mm-hmm.
With each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned having Thaisa Pastina earlier, and she is one. Her improvement has been. I think we had a story on the RacingBiz.com about this a few months ago. Her improvement has been noticeable. Like she's gotten a lot better over the last few years.
She'd moved from average earnings of about 500 to the 3 years ago. She broke her leg. She only rode for 5 months, and she did a little over 8. Then the next year $1.4 million, and last year $1.5 million. So and increased that percentage. Overall percentage riding, and Ty, she rides a great race. I mean, she finishes good, and the girls, of course, have a lot harder way to go than the guys. Getting mounts. Unfortunately, but that's the business.
Right. No, I often think of that, like with Forest Boys. Like, I mean, she puts horses run for her. She puts them in spots where they can win. She moves at the right time, and she doesn't get mounts.
Yeah, and it took about 10 years to get recognized. Really,
Yeah.
Like I said, hey, she can ride with all of them. You can see she beats Jamie Rodriguez, Toledo, Russell. If they have a horse. So, no one can perform miracles. I ride one. Flavian Pratt won't. Hazlewood won't. They won't. You know, they'll get you wins where maybe another rider might not get the job done in certain spots, you know, because
Sure.
of where they had them early or how they could finish with them. But
Right.
basically, our business is called horse racing. And I remember talking to Eddie Arcaro years ago at one of the Preakness balls, and I said to him, you know, we were talking about Kelso, and I said, Eddie, what do you think it is? How much does a trainer? How much does a jockey? How much percentage? What do they account for? He said, John, like I told you, he said it's horse racing. He said 85% horse, 3% trainer, and 2% rider. He said, you don't have the horse, you can't get the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No,
but you know, when you look at 2% and you look at winning a race by a nose, which there's 500 noses in a horse's length, and a fifth of a second they travel a length, right? So you're talking 1/500th of a second miscalculation could cost you winning or losing a race.
yeah.
So that 2%, I think, becomes a large part in a race with the jockey.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've often, you know, I used to own horses, and so I thought about this a lot at the time. The number of decisions jockeys make in the course of a race or a day that are functionally, you know, to all intents and purposes, basically 50-50 decisions. The guys who can come out right on those a lot are the guys who are going to win a lot of races. You know, you go in or you go out. You follow this one or you follow that one. And
right. Do I move now or do I move later? You know,
right.
I remember talking to our dearly departed, one of my close friends for many, many years, Vince Bracciali.
Mm-hmm.
Vince Ty rode and won some races for Vince, so she would go over and get on horses, and Vince would talk to her about riding, and he would always say, Ty, when you think you're ready to move, like you feel like this is the time I should move, count to 3 and then move. You'll give yourself a little extra time, and you might need that to get your head bobbed and win the race.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, it's interesting. Now, do you guys? Yeah, we were talking about Ty's improvement over the last few years. Do you have sort of specific things you want to see out of Hazlewood or goals for the year?
I just want him to keep riding the way he's riding, and I'd like to see him. I could say I'd like to see him. I told him, we were talking the other day with me and Jose, well, a couple of weeks ago. He likes to sit, he's, like you said, very, very patient. And he'll like to just kind of ease him back and make the one big run. And, not every horse likes that. Some like to be in the race a little, earlier, put him in there, you don't have to go head and head or, ding dong them with 3 riders, but sit them up a little closer, So start feeling that out, So because if a rider gets comfortable doing one thing, they keep doing it.
Sure.
They're comfortable doing it.
Right.
But you can't be comfortable riding one style because all horses have a different style they want to run.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to rate them, you're going to have to take them back and you're going to look like you're skiing on them. And that doesn't look good, and that doesn't do anything for the horse.
Right.
So, we talk to them about things like that and, kind of becoming well-rounded. And then one rider doesn't fit every horse in the barn anyway,
Yeah.
It's so, I think there are some of the things that he's learning, and I think have to become more ingrained in not only him, but most young riders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a big part of your job particularly with the younger riders, is to help them, like their growth and maturity. It's not just getting them mounts, but it's helping them learn what to
Yeah,
do with them.
I think that's the key to a young rider, because without somebody looking at them or just throwing them on horses to get them mounts and you know get them beat up the track, they're not learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like of course, when you get lucky like him, you get a rider like him, it's like hitting the lotto. I mean, they don't come around most often. And, I was very, very fortunate that Jose asked me to take his book, and because of our previous relationship, I think, we had a great working relationship. And with him, you just want to make sure that he stays on on the rails. You don't go off track.
Right. All right. Well, John DiNatale, this has been really interesting. I appreciate you taking the time with me to talk about sort of your career and Yedsit and other stuff. It's good stuff. So I appreciate you doing this, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, guys, some insight into the Yedsit Hazlewood story, which is continuing, and we'll be seeing plenty of Yedsit. So it's Yedsit's world at the moment. Mac, John, why don't you guys take a swing at the late races on Saturday at Laurel Park and tell us what we're looking at?
Well, I will start things off. And John, am I crazy if I want to try to single in the first leg of this late pick 5?
I mean, I will never begrudge. Well, I no, you're not, because I will never begrudge anybody who's trying to single in a wide open race. That's how you make money in a pick 5 and increase your profit. I do think it is a very tough race, and in spite of the fact that there are a lot of short fields, there are a lot of pretty interesting betting races in here. So I do think there's a chance to squeeze out some value. That being said, because of those short fields, it is a sequence where you will have to take, I think, at least one big stand. I'm curious to see who your big stand in that race is.
Look, I think Curling Spirit is actually the sneaky value play in here. Juniper's Jubilee is just who I kind of land on. I think she's run some very good races. She's been up against it a little bit. And, she broke her maiden last time out. She's facing horses who've, you have 3-time winners in rerun table and Curling Spirit. But I just think Juniper's Jubilee is finally kind of has the momentum behind her that we're going to see her keep going. The outside post sort of seals the deal for me.
I mean, going into her last race, she was a prime example of a chronic maiden for me. She had lost many, many times in a row at low prices, and I had gotten to a point where I was just like, if she wants to beat me, she can. And she did. She absolutely crushed the field that day. Went up by 5 lengths at on top of the stretch, ended up winning by 2.5. Looks like the main speed in here, it would not be a shock at all if she took them gate to wire. My top choice in here is one of those multiple winners, at least as of now, because that could change because it is a tough race in my book. Number 1, Barbados Bulldog, who's won 2 out of her last 3 starts. Ran a solid third at this level last time out. I'm kind of hoping that the pace is very fast because, as I said, Juniper's Jubilee has speed. So does Rerun Table from her inside. They got Curry, also broke her maiden in gate to wire fashion 2 starts back. Had a bad beginning last time out and didn't do much, but I think that she gets sent. So if it's an electric pace, it could set up for both Barbados Bulldog and Curling Spirit, who you mentioned briefly earlier.
Yeah, I do agree with you. It's a wide open field, and that's where I'm on the fence. I either have to single here or probably in race 6. And it's just, what are the odds I get any kind of value here? I'm not entirely sure. So that's where, kind of back and forth, but really, really well matched field. Now, race number 5, I kind of did narrow it down. I'll be curious what you think, though, because it's an interesting race going 1 1/8 miles, and there's only one horse in here who's hit the board at this distance before and audibly.
I ended up going with number 5, Fitness, on top. She's beaten winners twice. Actually beat winners going 2 turns on previous week at Pimlico last year, albeit in a short field. But it's really found, I think, her best self in her last few starts. Went gate to wire against softer 2 starts back. Then took a step up in class into a pretty salty starter optional claiming field and hung on pretty well. Ended up losing by 3 parts of length to the very classy Atlas Strong. Still ran a career best figure on the Brisnet scale of 86. Really, her only competition for the lead is Stress Reliever, drawn to her inside. But even then, I think she's shown the ability to run well from just off the pace. So she is going to be my top choice in here. Audibly will need a pace to close into. She has absolutely no early speed whatsoever, but she has closed well and hit the board at big prices in many of her last few starts at this level. Came in second to the Goddess Factor, going a mile and a 16th last time out. I think this is a easier field than that one. I mean, I can easily see her, like, once again, just coming in second and causing me to yell at the sky. But I do think she is worth multiple looks if you're playing the pick 5.
She is. Now, here's the thing. You have 2 speed horses, Stress Reliever and Fitness. If you end up with a scratch, it changes this race completely. And I kind of do agree. You just have to go all in with Fitness. Mooncash is one who I doubted last time out in that first off the bench. And then I saw her in the paddock and I knew immediately I was going to be wrong. And that's a feeling I'm familiar with. I can't quite bring myself to sort of hop to the other side of the fence. But do you think she is one who improves and just continues moving forward in her second off the bench?
She is really interesting, and I could easily see her beating me as well. I mean, it's easy to forget, but she was in very sharp form at about this time last year. Crossed the wire first, in fact, in the Beyond of the Wire at 17-1 in a huge effort. Ended up getting disqualified, but nonetheless. Then came back and ran a nice third in the Weber City Miss behind Complexity Jane, whose form has been validated many times over. She completely fell off towards the end of her 3-year-old season. So that last race was kind of a litmus test of, does she have anything at all left in the tank? And the answer is yes. So there is a very good filly in there somewhere. I do think she could absolutely take a step forward, second off the layoff, and one who I would not dismiss lightly.
No, she's a must-use for me. I'll be curious, whether people really, I don't think you can necessarily single her in this group, but she's probably going to end up a short price like we saw that last time out. She looked the part. And when she did, I want to mention, when she finished third to Complexity Jane, it was less than a length. And the second place finisher, Reply, also a very highly touted individual as well. So it was no slouch of an effort. But she's the type of racehorse who she really embodies everything you want in a racehorse. Excited to see what we have for her this spring. Now, race 6 is where we kind of dive right into the stakes action here and take the money, honey.
A thing about her and in the pick 5 is I think if you have any hope of getting a very good return, you have to hope that she loses. And because she is going to be, justifiably so, a huge favorite. And she has become somewhat notorious for losing many, many heartbreakers, including in the Barbara Fritchie last time out, where she ran just a gigantic race. Passage East. Passage East looked like she was ready to win by open length. Take the money, honey, fought back, ended up losing by a nose. Now, on paper, this is a drop down in class from Open Stakes Company into Maryland Restricted, but there's still some pretty salty horses in here, including number 6, Grayson's Girl, who was 5th to Take the Money, honey, 2 starts back. A bounce back with what I thought was a very impressive effort back on February 22nd in a second level allowance race. See here, she's number 3, sitting just off the pace and making a very nice 4-wide bid against a borderline stakes quality field. It's actually not that much less in quality than this one. She also won the Safely Kept with a similarly impressive move 3 starts ago. Think Fast, who came in second in that race, came back to beat a salty second level field of her own, I believe on General George Barbara Fritzy week. In this win, Grayson's Girl ran a Brisnet figure of 90. It is the third time that she has hit her career high mark in 6 races. So I could easily see her making her big move, take the money. Honey fights back at her in the stretch, and Grayson's Girl ultimately ends up getting the nod at a good price and completely blows up the pick 5. Also want to mention number 1, Dwelling Legacy, who had a big race against Passage East in the What a Summer Handicap 2 starts back. Of course, we talked about how well Passage East ran next time out, and it will be a rare opportunity to get a good price on a Gary Capuano Yedsit Hazlewood horse.
It's a great point. I'll be curious kind of what the price ends up shaking out to be. There's no way she goes off the favorite, but it really stands out, that race she ran with Passage East. She was on the inside, and she had a lot of work to do from there. She looks like she's in career best form. And, I love Take the Money, Honey. She's not going to go away easily. You aren't just shrugging her off, but she's on a little bit of a quicker turnaround. There's a lot of work to do. I don't think I can single in this race, and I agree with you. It could be your best opportunity to find some value because a lot of people likely will. Now, one who I want your take on is You're the One. I thought that the race 3 back against Hold Your Breath, really very good. And that's just propelled this one kind of into a new dimension. She's only tried the 7 furlongs once, and she won. This is maybe a distance that could suit her quite well. She has some speed, and I think could work well against this group. Now, Hold Your Breath came back and won with a 94 buyer in New York. And then I don't know what happened. I still can't explain what happened when she came to Maryland. But what's your take on this one? Because I think she's another little bit of value to throw in there.
She's really interesting. I don't think her ceiling is quite as high as that of the ones you mentioned, but I do think the key to her race is what Michael Sanchez is going to do, because she won gate to wire in her last 2 starts, both going 2 turns, but she's shown in her sprint races that she can run well from just off the pace. Now, there is, of course, a lot of speed in this one. Take the Money, Honey is going to show speed. Dwelling Legacy has shown foot. Destination, a couple of these class-wise, but is likely to also mix it up on the pace. So it could set up well for You're the One if Michael Sanchez elects to sit off the pace rather than contest them.
Exactly. So, maybe a little faster than we've seen, but I like the willingness there. And, we'll see if she's maybe able to split horses or sit just in behind and let them do the work for her. I'm not totally dismissing her in this group, but she's kind of an interesting horse who's really just moving forward. Has certainly figured out how to win in those last 2 outings, but I think the tactical ability might be there for the 7 furlongs. The Not for Love is race 7. Do you go with Quince Brew or do you not?
Well, this may be a 6-horse field, but this is a really, really good betting race. I am not sold on Quince Brew anymore. I do not think he has been nearly the same horse that he was at this time last year. I mean, I know he won Jennings 2 starts back, but he did that on just pure heart and class. Then he was kind of a flat third in the General George last time out. He's gone off at odds on in all 3 of his starts since coming off of a long layoff. He's going to likely be the favorite again. I think he's a horse you can pretty comfortably take a stand against. My top pick in here is another horse coming out of this General George, and he's the gray horse on the inside. That is number 6 in this race, Blue Kingdom. He was terrible in the Bender 3 starts back, ran a huge race in the Jennings, then ran what I thought was a pretty good race here as well. Point Doom, who's on the front end, as you can see, he set the pace and just kind of cruised. Here's where I think Slam Notion and Quince Brew looked like they were going to make their big moves, ended up flattening out. I thought of the closers, Blue Kingdom ran the best race. He was able to outkick them all on the inside, got off with second by a comfortable length and a half. Now, he did draw the inside post in his last 2 starts. Now he's drawn towards the outside, but he's shown that he can run well from outside post. I mean, after all, he broke from post 5 out of 6 in the Maryland Million Classic and almost wired Barbadian runner and post time. He has fantastic early pace figures. I think he'll be able to get to the front and possibly outkick Sure Meant to Be, who looks like the main speed drawn towards the inside. If not, he has shown that he can run well from the 2 path. And I do think that Quince Brew is going to take an excessive amount of money here and make Blue Kingdom a much more attractive proposition.
I agree. And, I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of Blue Kingdom earlier on, but now I really like him. And I think he's what we saw in that last outing where he isn't necessarily a need the lead. And even in the 2-back in the Jennings, this is a horse who he can sit just the right trip. I don't necessarily want him on the front end, though. I want him to sit just behind that horse, and he has the gate speed. Now, this is a little bit of a change, though, because he's cutting back even more to the 6 furlongs. So that's where I wonder, how much does it lean towards the horses who are, true 6 furlong sprinters versus those middle distance types? Twisted Ride, I can't quite count out because he looks to me like the upset type. He has speed, but he's had a lot of messy trips.
He has, and he has loads of back class. And to your point, he's raced 17 times at 6 furlongs, and he's finished in the exacta 9 times out of 17. Blue Kingdom and Quinn Sprue, who we talked about at the top, have done their best work going 7 furlongs or a mile. As you said, he's had a lot of tough trips. 2 starts back in the fire plug handicap. He just got completely knocked out of contention by an awful break. Ran a huge race on the lead at Parks, both last out and 3 starts back. He is going to have to call on all that class because of the aforementioned sure meant to be. But he's a horse who I can easily see people dismissing, and then he wins at a pretty good price, and then everyone's like, what did we miss?
Exactly. I think he's really interesting in here. SS Sinatra has also had some troubled trips. He's run some good races, maybe needs to run his career best race here, but Twisted Ride does have the back class, and I don't think he's out of form. I just think it's a little bit of racing luck. He just needs to kind of break clean, and he certainly could. Sure Meant to Be, as you mentioned, is the other one. I don't know if I want him on the front end, but he has been very impressive with these 2 efforts. He's just a different type of horse, and he's finished up really nicely. How much further do you think he steps forward in this start?
I mean, I can see him running them off their feet. I can see him losing by 20 lengths. I think either one is a very realistic possibility. He did run well from off the pace. 2 starts back in a 17-1 upset, then went gate to wire against a really soft Maryland restricted field last time. I know you said that you didn't want him on the lead, but I'm not quite sure who else is going to take the front end, especially going 6 furlongs. So I do think J.D. Torrealba is just going to send and hope that he has enough left in the stretch.
Exactly. That's my only thing where I'm not sure how he can win, because I'm conflicted there, right? I don't know if I want him on the lead, but I agree in that he probably does end up, especially coming from the 5.5 efforts. We wrap things up in the 8th. Now, we were talking about this before we came on. Tell Him I'm Coming took 31 starts, and then on his 32nd, he finally graduated. He comes back here, he steps up in company, faces winners for the first time, but he gets the 1-turn mile. Do you think he can make it 2 in a row?
See, his maiden win is a kind of race where if the people who founded the thoroughbred breed 350, 400 years ago knew that this race was going to happen, they may not have bothered inventing it in the first place. That being said, he has been in decent form in his last few starts. 2 starts back in a more legitimate effort. He came in second to Albert Finnegan, who came back to beat Elmer as a 2 company in his next start. And he was saying earlier that he's very well suited for a 1-turn mile. That's what he's getting here. He's also in a very soft field by starter optional claiming 20 standards. So I'm not quite as eager to dismiss him as I might be otherwise. My tentative top choice in a very wide open field is the 5 Party with Smarty, who broke his maiden at 26th asking 2 starts ago at Aqueduct with a big last to first rally. Made his local debut and his first start for Jamie Ness last time out. Ran a nice 3rd in a better race at this condition. He gets Yedsit Hazlewood up for the first time. He's run okay at this distance against better horses in the past, so he gets my tentative top choice. And I do think it's a race where you'll have to spread out a lot in the pick 5, because if I'm alive to anything going into this race, I have no confidence in anybody.
I agree with you. Now, here's my one question. Punch It Margaret might appreciate the distance. We haven't necessarily seen that one. You have to go all the way back to January last year. Very different company that we saw him try the 1 turn mile against. So that's one who I would use. Be the judge. I know he finished ahead of That's My Pharaoh and Tell Him I'm Coming last time out. I can't necessarily bring myself to use that horse and trust him. But is there a chance he just goes gate to wire here?
I think so. I mean, that was his second race off a year plus layoff. It was his first start against maiden 12.5s, and he was able to cross and clear and win at 48-1. As you said, both That's My Pharaoh and Tell Him I'm Coming came back to validate the relative quality of that race. He has not raced since that effort, but he has worked well. And in cheap races like this, I think early speed is a particularly big advantage. Sometimes horses just hit the front and nobody else can close, and so they just keep on going, even if they themselves are struggling late. So I have to imagine that he is going to make the early lead. And, he is by far the most lightly raced horse in this field, which is another big edge. So I do think there's a good chance he takes them all the way.
Very, very, very fair. All right, wrap things up for us. If you have to single in any of these races, which one and who is it?
I would say, honestly, probably Blue Kingdom. I do not think that you could single Take the Money Honey if you really want to make money. I mean, if you want to just cash a ticket, you can single Take the Money Honey. But if you're trying to make a big score in the pick 5, I would use only Dwelling Legacy and
Grayson's Girl.
Yes, who I somehow blanked out on. I don't quite know how that happened. But yes, those two. In the conniver, possibly also the Ashby horse, You're the One. And then I would single Blue Kingdom and try to beat Quince Brew, because I think if you can beat Quince Brew and Take the Money Honey, in spite of there being all these small fields, that pick 5 is going to pay well.
I agree. I think that's a really good strategy here. And if ever you're going to Take the Money Honey in restricted company, this might be the weekend to do it. She doesn't miss by much, so you'll be holding your breath all the way down to the wire, though. Really fun little sequence to put together. I might try to just single early on. That's my go-to, because then I can get back in that pick 4. If it doesn't work out, I want to know early.
Right. I mean, as Dan Illman always reminds us on the pre-race show, if you miss out in the early pick 5, come back and play the early pick 4 or late pick 4. And every day I hear that and I'm like, I hope he's not talking to me, because I would at least like to get some thrill and be alive after a leg. That's what I hope every time I play a pick 5. Just let me stay. Give me 30 minutes of exhilaration. Don't let me get.
I agree. Let me at least ride the roller coaster once.
Absolutely. That's all about.
Fun. Well, we'll see what Frank thinks. Maybe he has a single for us, but interesting card, and this is great.
Okay, there we go. Is that better?
You can't be wrong if we couldn't hear you.
Exactly. I'm never wrong when nobody hears me. No, I said I was struggling with John's time machine. He's going back to the advent of the thoroughbred as a breed and stopping it. He's booking future bets on the Maryland Million Sprint. I mean, he's just all over the place. It's tremendous. So that one race, that starter you were talking about, you got a horse that was 0 for 31 and a horse that was 0 for 25. Do you think other horses look at a race like that and go, you're telling me there's a chance? We can win.
I think people should look at it that way.
Right.
I don't know if the horses look at it that way, but the people should.
Maybe they should. Well, great job, guys. Thank you both very much. Encourage people to do this, like and subscribe. You catch us on YouTube. You catch us on Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So please do that. You could also see John's handicapping everyday live racing in Maryland on the racingbiz.com. And Mackenzie and John are both part of the handicapping guide at laurelpark.com. See their thoughts and picks as well there. So thank you both so much. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds great.
Can't wait.
Thank you all.